Hi guys, I'm Clarke, and before I get into the video, please make sure you've liked and subscribed to the channel if you do enjoy the stuff. It really does make a difference. So today I'm having a look at what makes a great lead or solo tone. Now, this is only going to be my view on it. I completely appreciate that everyone's going to have different opinions on this, and I'm by no means saying that what I do is correct. But I thought I'd take you through the process of what I do when I'm coming up with any kind of lead tone. So I'm going to break it down into three sections: context, gain, and then finally reverb and delay. And after that, I'll put it all together and do a little demonstration with a backing track to show you how it applies. So let's get into it. So the reason context comes first is because it's going to influence what you do with gain and reverb and delay. In fact, it's going to affect everything you do from that point. So what do I mean by context? Well, firstly, are you playing live or are you recording? If you're playing live, you might need to think about some kind of clean boost to get you over the level of the band. Whereas if you're recording, that can be all done in mixing, so you don't need to worry too much about what volume you're playing at. If you are playing live, do you have one guitar, two guitars? Is there a keys player, etc., etc.? Is there someone you need to get above? In which case, you might want to think about mids. Boosting the mids is often used to cut through a little bit more, so if you've got a second guitarist particularly, that can be very useful. Again, if you're playing live, what kind of room are you playing? Is it a very dead sounding room, very dry, or is it very echoey? If it's very echoey, you may want to hold back on the reverb and delays a little bit. If it's a very dry room, maybe you want to boost the reverbs and delays a little bit. You've got to think about what kind of context you're playing in before you can start thinking about what kind of tone you need to get. Now, obviously, right here and now, this isn't a live performance, so I'm going to assume that I'm recording for purposes of this demonstration. Okay, how much gain should you use? Now, this is probably going to be the most divisive subject that I'm going to address in this video. It kind of depends what kind of thing you're doing. Now, obviously, I'm talking about rock here, so we're probably going to be looking at more gain rather than low gain. Now, in order to demonstrate this, I've got the Strymon Riverside. Now, the reason I've chosen this pedal is because I find it extremely versatile and it's got a 3-band EQ, which I find really, really useful. Now, playing into the Helix native model of a Fender Twin, this is what we've got. Very dry, very clean, so it's all going to be done with the effects afterwards. So, first the overdrive. Now you can see I've got the drive knob pretty high on this. Usually I'd actually stack two overdrives together, but for simplicity of this video, I'm just going to look at one. Now the level I'm not doing anything with. Like I said earlier, I'm recording, I'm not worrying about boosting the volume. But then the EQ section, there is a little bit going on. So I'm not really doing a lot with the treble. I've dialed it back a little bit because I'm playing a Strat. It tends to be on the brighter end of things. The mids I've dialed back a bit. Now, earlier on I said if you're playing in a live environment, you might want to push the mids a bit. And when you're playing over another guitarist and you're playing live, that can be really, really important. The risk of doing that is you kind of lose the smoothness. If you cut the mids out, you tend to get everything flow together a lot nicer. If you look at maybe Dimebag Darrell's guitar tone, he almost had no mids in his sounds, and that allowed his fast runs to be very fluid. Obviously, that's an extreme example, but it's probably the most obvious one if you want to check out what I'm talking about. I've also boosted the bass a bit just to give it a bit of thickness, because when you're playing single notes, it's easy for them to sound quite weak. Now, if you're looking at rhythm stuff, then that might be quite different because it could end up being quite a lot if you're playing low down chords. But for single note stuff, I find a little bit of extra bass really does help. So here we go. Cool, sounds pretty good. The only issue I have with it is there's not a lot of sustain. The note does last, but it starts to tail off and become weaker, and I kind of want to support it so I can do those extended notes without it dying away. Now, I've also got the SP compressor from Exotic here. Now, this is something I used a lot in the studio with Brave Rival on both albums, but it's not something I really use live because I find the extra noise to be quite annoying. So here's where I would probably use a second overdrive if I was playing live. When recording, however, I find it works quite well because while there is excessive noise, when you're playing, it doesn't really come across. So you can probably hear that extra bit of noise there, but when I start playing... When you start playing, it's actually all right. Now, the thing to be careful of when you have a noise floor is making sure that you can't really hear it or you're not really conscious of it while playing. It's always going to be there, but if it's distracting, then maybe you've got the gain a little bit too high or you're compressing a little bit too much. Okay, so reverb and delay. Now, this will be different for me on different solos. Sometimes I'll just use one or other. I will sometimes use both. For today, I'm going to use both just to demonstrate it. So I always go delay into reverb. I know some people do it the other way around, but I find if you put delay into reverb, you can allow the repeats of the delay to be quite washy, and you can get this lovely sort of supporting wash underneath what you're playing. So here's the delay first I've got set up. So it's not fast, it's not slow, it's not timed crucially. The only time I'll use a times delay, if it's really crucial to the part to have that echo going on, I actually usually want an untimed delay just so it's completely free and it's just, like I say, adding that supporting layer. If I now add the reverb, I've got a simple plate reverb going on. If I just do that on its own. Nothing crazy. I will always play with a little bit reverb on, but with lead tones, I tend to have a little bit more reverb, sometimes even stacking multiple reverbs together, the amp's reverb and a pedal, something like that. But when we stack the delay and the reverb together, so then turn them off. It really highlights the fact that you have maybe gone from playing chords to playing only one note. Suddenly it becomes quite weak and thin. If I add those delay and reverb in, I just find it bridges that gap a little bit better. Now, obviously, when you're playing rhythm stuff, that much delay and reverb's probably not ideal, but for a solo, I really think it helps. So I'm now going to put it all together to demonstrate it to you guys. This is the new single by Brave Rival called Fairytale. Shameless plug, I know. But yeah, let's hear it. So let me know in the comments what you think of my method here, if you do anything differently, if you have your own ideas of how you approach solo tones. If you liked the video, please hit that like button. Make sure you have subscribed and you've got the bell icon ticked to be notified of new videos. Have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.